I thought it was a real estate brochure, or maybe another credit card promo when I saw the envelope. Thick, gold-edged, with embossed lettering that screamed, "I have more money than sense." But when I flipped it open, I froze. It was a wedding invitation, and not just anyone's. It was from Grayson, my ex. The man who once swore he couldn't afford rent, who lived in my apartment rent-free while figuring things out, who left dirty dishes for days and never remembered to take out the trash, but somehow remembered to chase after a blonde heiress with a waterfront condo and a last name that graced multiple downtown buildings. Right there, next to his name and Sierra Kensington's, was a handwritten note in his unmistakable chicken scratch. "Would love for you to see what winning looks like." I let out a single, humorless laugh. This wasn't an invitation. It was a performance, a carefully curated show of "look who I landed, look how far I've come, look how irrelevant you are now." For a full minute, I stared at the card like it might catch fire in my hands. But it didn't. It just sat there, smug and heavy with intention. He wanted me to see him glow up. He wanted to flaunt the fact that Sierra, rich, polished, family-funded Sierra, had chosen him. That he'd gone from my tiny apartment, where I paid 80% of the rent and cooked for two, to a castle built on someone else's daddy's empire. I could have torn the card up. I could have ignored it. But instead, I smiled. If Grayson wanted me to witness his grand finale, I'd attend front row, dressed in power, with a +1 that would make his diamond-drenched bride-to-be look like a footnote. I wasn't going for closure. I wasn't going for validation. I was going for something colder, clarity. Because Grayson didn't just walk out of my life. He used it as a stepping stone. He mistook my support for servitude, my compassion for weakness. And now he wanted applause? No, I was done clapping for men who mistake self-worth for status. So yes, I RSVP'd, +1 in bold ink. And in that moment, I didn't just accept a wedding invitation. I accepted an opportunity to remind him exactly who he walked away from. When Grayson moved into my apartment, it wasn't because he loved the view, or even loved me, though back then I told myself otherwise. I was 22, juggling a demanding marketing job during the day and part-time event work on weekends. Rent wasn't cheap, but independence had always been my dream. When he said his lease was up and his job prospects were in a gray area, I offered him my couch. A few weeks later, his things were neatly stacked in my closet, and I was grocery shopping for two. Grayson had recently quit his sales job. To chase something bigger, he told me, eyes gleaming with ambition, and just enough desperation to make it seem noble. He said he was going to launch a tech startup. Something disruptive, he promised. But for all the talk, his laptop rarely opened. Most mornings, I left for work while he was still in bed. Most nights, I came home to the same half-washed dishes and a sink full of excuses. I didn't complain, at least not at first. I believed in him. When he said the apartment was too small to feel creative, I rearranged furniture so he could have a desk by the window. When he said he needed time to think, I signed up for a gym to give him space. When he forgot to apply for jobs, I wrote him a resume. When he got rejected, I was his cheerleader, therapist, and silent provider. We split rent, but only on paper. I covered 80%. I told myself it was temporary, that we were a team, that he just needed time. I started waking up early to meal prep for both of us. Chicken rice bowls and breakfast burritos wrapped in foil with handwritten notes. "Crush it today," I'd scribble, believing that encouragement was the fuel he needed. But the meals often sat uneaten in the fridge, replaced by Uber Eats bags and half-drunk energy drinks. He said he couldn't focus without the right energy. I began to realize he didn't want a partner. He wanted a sponsor. Still, I held on. I told myself I was a builder, that I was helping him rebuild after life knocked him down. I read books about emotional labor, tried to be patient, tried to support without pressure. I scrubbed floors, paid bills, did his laundry, even ironed his shirts when he had interviews. Then, one weekend, I came home after a 14-hour conference shift and found the apartment in shambles. The kitchen sink overflowed with dishes. Pizza boxes towered like monuments of laziness, and the stench of old trash burned my throat. My plants had died. My mood followed. I didn't say anything that night. I cleaned for 4 hours straight, sweating, scrubbing, crying. When Grayson got back, he greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and dropped onto the couch to finish the game he had paused earlier. No apology, no thank you, not even a glance at the house that now sparkled. I stood there, waiting for him to notice, to care, to say something. Nothing. I went to bed in silence, the resentment crawling up my spine like a fever. The next morning, the trash still hadn't been taken out. I lost it. He looked confused when I snapped at him, like I was the problem. "You're being dramatic," he said, reaching for cereal from the same kitchen I had just spent hours disinfecting. That's when the words flew out of my mouth. "What do you do in this house?" He blinked. "I'm tired, Claire. I'm trying to build something for us." "For us?" I repeated, half laughing, half choking on rage. "What exactly have you built besides a collection of dirty mugs and overdue bills?" His silence was louder than any insult. He shrugged and muttered, "My mom always did this stuff for my dad. I thought you understood." I froze. In that moment, I realized he didn't see me as his equal. He saw me as his substitute mother. He saw my love as labor, my patience as permission. He mistook my silence for service. That night, I didn't cook, I didn't clean, I didn't talk. I made a decision. No more housemaid, no more therapist, no more unpaid emotional labor. Grayson's betrayal didn't come with a bang. It came in a text. After weeks of cold shoulders, late nights networking, and me waking up to find the other side of the bed untouched, I finally asked him straight, "Are you seeing someone else?" His response? "I didn't plan for this, but Veronica and it just makes sense. She gets me." That was it. No apology, no shame, just another transaction in his ladder climb. I had loved him with everything: time, effort, rent money, forgiveness, and he replaced me with a walking trust fund in red-bottom heels. Veronica Hale. I recognized the name instantly. Her face had graced our city's charity galas, usually beside her father, real estate mogul Barrett Hale. She wasn't just rich, she was the economy. I remembered seeing her once at a startup mixer Grayson dragged me to. She wore a backless silk jumpsuit and looked like someone who'd never asked for Wi-Fi in a public place. just whispered her last name and got ushered into VIP. Apparently, she'd been impressed with Grayson's charm, though I doubt she knew it was polished using my elbow grease. One brunch later, she slipped her number into his coat pocket. A week after that, he ghosted. I came home to a nearly empty closet and a single sticky note. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. Try to understand. Understand? He wanted me to understand why he abandoned our life, our plans, our dog. Yes, I took full custody of Luna. For private jets and someone whose skincare routine cost more than my rent? I didn't cry. I didn't even scream. I just stood there, holding that note, realizing I had been funding a rehearsal for someone else's main act. For months, I buried myself in work, got promoted, leveled up to a one-bedroom near the lake. I even took Luna on a solo trip to Arizona. Healing wasn't linear, but it was mine. Then, one fall evening, as I sifted through my mail, there it was, the envelope, the heavy ivory cardstock, the gold-foiled names. Grayson and Veronica. A vineyard wedding in Napa Valley. Dress code, black tie. Inside, scribbled with the same arrogant flair as his goodbye note, "I'd love for you to see the life I was meant for." My chest burned, not with heartbreak, but with something sharper. Not sadness. Rage. Not the kind that makes you scream into pillows. The kind that simmers. The kind that plans. He wanted me to witness his success, to sit quietly in a pew, clap politely, and sip overpriced champagne while pretending he hadn't built his future on my back? Fine. I'd RSVP, with a +1. But not just any +1. I opened my laptop and searched for Veronica Hale on Instagram. I knew she wouldn't have changed her privacy settings. People like her thrive on curated exposure. As expected, the grid was a museum of glam. Rooftop cocktails, designer fittings, blurry shots of Grayson in vacation linen. And then, I found him. Leo Maddox. Veronica's ex. A rugged indie filmmaker who once called her his muse and appeared in at least a dozen tagged photos across 4 years. Their breakup? Barely 6 months old. I scrolled until I found his profile, sent a follow request, and waited. He accepted an hour later. I sent a message. "Hey Leo, I know this might be weird, but I have a proposition, and I think you'll want to hear it." He replied, cautiously curious. So I laid it out. Told him everything, how Grayson had used me, dumped me, flaunted his shiny new life in my face, and now expected me to attend his wedding like a quiet ghost from the past. Leo's typing bubble flickered for a while. Then he responded, "Let's burn the whole damn circus down." We talked, laughed, bonded over being stepping stones in other people's ambition narratives. He agreed to be my +1. Not for revenge, for reckoning. I bought a gown that made me feel like power incarnate. Leo flew in the day before the wedding. We met for coffee and mapped out how we'd walk in, not as bitter exes, but as living proof that we weren't broken, just badly underestimated. The morning of the wedding, Napa was drenched in golden sun and vineyard mist, like the world had conspired to make their fantasy day picture perfect. But I wasn't there to cry or reminisce. I was there to show up, stand tall, and take back my narrative. Leo arrived at my hotel room dressed like every indie film lead ever. Sharp tucks, slightly unruly curls, eyes that said, "Let them underestimate us." We shared a quiet coffee, exchanged one last look of "we've got this," and headed to the estate. The venue was ridiculous. A French chateau replica perched on a hill, champagne flowing before the ceremony even began. Gold-trimmed name cards lined the tables, Imported orchids hung in chandeliers. Servers wore gloves. The entire event screamed curated excess. But the moment we stepped onto the property, all that faded. Because all eyes turned. Gasps, whispers, and then Grayson. He stood at the far end of the courtyard, mid-conversation with one of Veronica's uncles. His jaw tightened the second he saw us. He recognized Leo instantly. His eyes flicked between us, my confident stride, Leo's casual arm looped through mine, the unspoken alliance of two people he'd underestimated. He made his way toward us quickly, plastering on a fake grin. "Claire, wow, you made it," he said, his voice strained. I smiled. "Wouldn't miss it. Such a grand life, remember?" Grayson's eyes darted to Leo. "This is—" Leo extended a hand. "Leo Maddox. Veronica's past, Claire's present." Grayson's handshake faltered. "You remember Leo, don't you?" I added sweetly. "They dated for years, before, well, you." Grayson's smile dropped half an inch. "Of course." A hostess interrupted to guide guests to the ceremony area. As we walked to our seats, I caught Grayson hissing something to one of his groomsmen. Leo and I didn't look back. We didn't need to. We'd already done our part. Then came the real show. The music shifted and guests stood, and there she was, Veronica Hale, gliding down the aisle in a custom couture gown, diamonds dripping from her ears. She looked ethereal, untouchable, almost robotic. Until she saw us. She paused. Just for a second, just long enough for me to see it, that flicker in her eyes. Recognition, confusion, then something colder. Panic. She kept walking, her grip visibly tightening on her father's arm. Leo leaned toward me and whispered, "She saw me." "I know," I whispered back. The ceremony itself was brief, vows read like business mergers. We promise to build. We promise to invest. We promise to rise together. They kissed. The crowd clapped. And I waited, because the reception was where the real unraveling would begin. Veronica re-entered in a second gown, something sleek and glittering. She hadn't noticed Leo and me in the crowd until we rose from our table and moved to the dance floor. She stopped cold. Then she stormed over. "Leo, what the hell are you doing here?" she hissed. I stepped between them. Veronica blinked at me like she was trying to process math in a dream. "This is insane. You're just trying to ruin this for me." Leo stayed quiet. "I invited Leo," I said. "You know, your ex, the one you ghosted for Hunter." Her cheeks flushed. "You don't get to do this, Claire." I tilted my head. "Funny, I don't remember you caring much when I got replaced. You were fine watching me get steamrolled while Hunter posted Instagram captions like, 'leveled up.'" Guests had begun to watch. Whispers rippled across the room. Then Leo finally spoke. "Veronica, I didn't come here to make a scene. I came to get closure." Veronica stared at him. "Closure?" Leo's gaze didn't waver. "I never hated you. I hated how fast you discarded people. I thought maybe this wedding was the final chapter, but seeing you now, it's just another rewrite." Silence. I took Leo's hand. "Come on, let's dance." As we turned, I heard Veronica call out, "You're pathetic, both of you." Leo chuckled. "You can't insult people who've already healed." And with that, the reception continued, but the energy had shifted. The air inside the ballroom was no longer effervescent with celebration. It was dense with tension. You could feel the whispers slithering between the tables like smoke. Some guests smiled politely, pretending not to notice the drama unraveling just feet from the wedding cake. Grayson stood at the edge of the crowd, sipping his bourbon a little too fast, his smile slipping more with each drink. Veronica hadn't returned since her confrontation with Leo and me. Her parents looked increasingly concerned. Leo and I took our seats, savoring the quiet triumph. But we didn't gloat. We didn't need to. We had already won by walking in as our full, unapologetic selves. And that's when Ava, my best friend from college, who happened to work in the same media circle as Hunter, walked over to our table. She leaned in, her eyes glinting like a match about to strike. "You won't believe what I've been sitting on," she whispered, pulling out her phone. I blinked. "What is it?" "A little audio souvenir," she smirked, tapping her screen. It was a voice memo, grainy but unmistakable. Grayson's voice, drunk and slurring. "Veronica's pretty and all, but man, she doesn't get it, you know? Claire had fire. She'd challenge me. Veronica just agrees with everything. I miss that spark. But whatever, I'm set now. Just gotta smile for the cameras." I froze. The recording continued with more. Jokes about Veronica's IQ, comments about how he faked liking her art collection, and the kicker, his plan to never work again after marrying into wealth. Ava whispered, "He said this at a bachelor party. One of the bartenders recorded it and sent it to me anonymously. He didn't know I knew you." I stared at the phone. Every part of me wanted to forget it, to just ride the quiet win I'd already earned. But this wasn't revenge. This was justice. "Play it," I said. Ava didn't hesitate. She stood, walked confidently to the DJ booth, and asked the DJ to plug in her phone. He blinked, confused, but she leaned in and whispered something that made him nod. A minute later, the ballroom speakers crackled, and then Grayson's drunken voice spilled into the room like spilled wine on white silk. The music stopped. Conversations died. Forks froze mid-air. Claire had fire. I missed that spark. Gasps. Someone dropped a glass. Veronica's mother's mouth fell open. Grayson stood, looking around in horror. "Turn it off," he barked. But the message had already sunk in. The guests didn't just look shocked, they looked disgusted. Suddenly, the door to the bridal suite burst open. Veronica. She had changed back into her original wedding gown. Her cheeks were flushed, not from makeup, but from rage. She marched up to the microphone the DJ had just stepped away from and took a deep breath. "I'd like to thank everyone for coming," she said, voice trembling but strong. Grayson stumbled forward. "Veronica, wait!" She raised a hand. "No, don't. I heard the recording. I heard everything. You lied to me, mocked me, used me." Whispers exploded into murmurs. A guest started recording. Veronica turned toward the crowd. "I apologize for wasting your time. The wedding is over. There will be no honeymoon. There will be no marriage." She turned to walk off, but then paused. "And Claire," she said, her voice steady, "thank you for the fire." That last line, that was the recognition. It wasn't just a moment of apology, it was a moment of truth. I stood frozen as people slowly turned their heads, some nodding in approval, others simply stunned. Grayson stood there alone, humiliated under the chandeliers he thought would light his victory. Leo leaned in. "You okay?" I exhaled, smiled faintly. More than okay. We left without another word. Outside, the air was cool, quiet. As Leo opened the car door for me, I looked back. I didn't attend that wedding to break hearts or prove a point. I went to remind myself who I truly was and to silently, powerfully close a chapter that had been left wide open for too long. When I first met Grayson, I thought love meant sacrifice. I poured my time, energy, and resources into someone who didn't see my worth beyond convenience. I gave, and he took, until there was nothing left but quiet resentment and dimmed dreams. Then came the betrayal, the replacement, the humiliation, the invitation designed not with kindness, but with cruelty. And yes, I raged. I brought Leo not for vengeance, but to stand beside someone who saw me for who I really was. I walked into that wedding not as the girl he discarded, but as the woman he underestimated. Every step since then, from setting boundaries to confronting my pain, from surviving whispers to owning the room, wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my story. When Veronica stood under the lights and called off the wedding, it wasn't my victory, it was hers too. In that moment, she saw through the illusion and chose herself. And that's what we all deserve, the power to walk away from a narrative that was never ours to begin with. I don't know what Grayson will do with his regrets. I don't need to know, because my life isn't written in the margins of his anymore. Since that night, I've started over, not just with my space or career, but with my spirit. I've stopped apologizing for my ambition. I've stopped waiting for validation from people who were never equipped to give it. Most of all, I've stopped fearing solitude, because there's peace in being whole without needing to be someone else's better half. So if you've ever been used, dismissed, or made to feel like you weren't enough, let this be your reminder. You are. You always were. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show up, not for them, but for yourself.